Good morning, everybody. I would like to take this opportunity to thank my supervisor, Professor Espinosa, for the fact that what I'm going to discuss is actually an event that took place in my community, and she was wondering about my objectivity in addressing the issue. And I said, well, I want to be a voice of the people, and I want to advocate for these issues. So I decided I would give it a try. But I'm not sure. Let me try. So my topic is the gendered effects of land conflict, and my case is specifically the Mount Elgon interethnic conflict, which is actually based on land conflict. And you can see my title. The issues of Mount Elgon are as skewed as my title. So why gendered? We're saying that conflicts in most cases, and I'm talking about the whole world, focus mostly on the linkage between natural resources and acute violence. They pay less attention to the gender dimensions of this correlation. We have that correlation. And then there's no disaggregated data on how to intervene. How do you intervene when you have put together everybody? And then it leads to blanket targeting of community for punishment, as I'll explain later. And then, of course, all groups suffer, but differently. Sorry. I want to show you the map of Mount Elgon. This is Kenya, but this is Mount Elgon. You can see it's on fire. And this is Mount Elgon. It's very, very fertile volcanic soils. And so, what are the gender needs that we are talking about? We are saying that women have different needs, men have different needs. These categories have very specific needs during conflict, which most people don't address. And I'm talking about all the agencies. We're talking about the government, we're talking about the NGOs, and we are talking about the private sector. It's kind of addressing a general way. I mean, it's a way of dealing generally with the issues without looking specifically at these issues. For example, what happens to women? Women, if there's conflict, are displaced. Women, when there's conflict, are put in an IDP camp, that is internally displaced camp. And in this camp, there are specific needs that women have. For example, sanitary conditions in an IDP. Women, when they have their periods, need specific toilets, I mean like privacy, but they cannot have it when they're in an open place. Men, on the other hand, become targets of conflict, and they are always looked at as perpetrators. But as my literature review will find out, even men suffer. They also are victims of violence. Children lack parental guidance. Children suffer because they have no protection, and then they are like driven from one place to another, and the youth are kind of idling somewhere in the middle. Most of them are recruited. They become what we call child soldiers. And in my literature review, I looked at Sudan, for example. There was one boy who's a case study that's very good. He was a child soldier, but now he's a success story, of course, after rehabilitation. What about the physically handicapped, the old and the sick? When people run away from conflict, what happens to them? They are left behind. They can't run, they die. So the rich also and the powerful have their needs, only that they are negative. I'm sorry, I changed that positive and it came back. So I don't know why it's insisting on remaining positive. Their needs are negative because they want to perpetuate a system that exists so that they continue being rich. And then politicians use land as a political tool. Let me look at the historical problems related to land allocations. Failure by the government to conclude the resettlement, increasing population, claims of huge chunks of land by some specific groups like the spiritualists who are called the Libons, challenge of balancing between conserving the environment and meeting the needs of the people. By the way, Mount Elgon is a PA, a protected area. Maureen has already talked about it. And so the government kind of sealed it off so to have it as a protected area. But then people also have to eat. So if we are protecting an area, what are the people eating? And then the politicians use land to manipulate votes. Like if I give you a piece of land, then you give me a vote. And then there's also rampant corruption, and it is real. And then we have availability and infiltration of small arms and light weapons. We are bordering Uganda. Remember I showed you the Kenya map, and Uganda has been in conflict for a while. I'm sorry to say that, although now it's good. But we are saying that there's still the infiltration of arms coming in, and of course youths take advantage of that. And then we have the breakdown of traditional values that we used to have. And in the Mount Elgon conflict, the The spiritualists, the so-called foretellers, were the ones who kind of created the conflict because they gave conflicting information to the people. So what happened really? What about this conflict? This is a brief rundown of what happened. The colonialists came. They displaced the people of Mount Elgon because they wanted to convert the Mount Elgon area into what we call the White Highlands, and because it was very fertile. And the British wanted to own the place and farm. They loved farming anyway. So they displaced the Mount Elgon people from Transoia to Mount Elgon. But after a while, in 1948, they thought they should remove them because they wanted the area to be protected. Remember yesterday somebody was presenting about deforestation and the adverse effects of farming in the forest area, cutting down trees. And Maureen has also talked about conservation. So we are saying that the people were to be removed from that area. Where do they go to? They were brought down from the highlands to the valley, to the plains. And you know, people in the highlands are what we call gatherers and hunters. They cannot farm. So you know, the people who are living down are farmers. There was a conflict. How can they coexist? So they decided that they were going to coexist. They didn't. So the government decided to create another resettlement for this specific group that had been displaced, the so-called Dorobo. And so they were given land. The Soy, which is the other ethnic clan, decided, no way, we also need more land. And so there was controversy in phase 3, you see there, and because some people had to surrender more land in order to give to those who are needy. Then, because of the controversy, there is a group called the Sabaot Land Defense Force. Sabaot is the Mount Elgon people. It is a defense force. It rose up because it wanted to create a parallel kind of defense force. And the government reacted because they didn't like the idea of having a force. They were calling themselves a force. Who are these who are creating a separate government? So in 2008, therefore, there was full-scale war, and then the government deployed the military. That is a picture of women and children in IDP camps. Where are the men? So in my literature review, I reviewed all over the world, conflict in all over the world, Sudan, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and so on. And then I combined with the Mount Elgon one. I also interviewed people, including the police boss in Kenya, and it was truly funny. I mean, sorry, not funny, bad finding out that one, women and children and men are affected differently by conflict. Two, that sexual violence is used as a weapon of war. This is very, very rampant. Women are raped, they are intimidated. The women are raped in the presence of men, and the men are told, we are raping your women so that you know that you have no power. And remember, there was a force that was there, a separate force from the government. So they wanted to really show them that they had no voice. And so they were raping the women. One woman was even saying that she was told, we want to finish your family lineage so that you don't have rebels coming up and creating a separate force. And then, of course, land is used for political manipulation. I've mentioned that. And then media highlights conflict when it is escalating. But when conflict ends, what happens? Nobody hears about Mount Elgon, but visit the websites of Mount Elgon in 2006 and 2008. You'll find a lot of highlighted issues. But now, issues are still there, nobody's talking about them. The media has also moved to where there's conflict. So, the community is targeted for punishment, there is infrastructure destruction. Then, it leads to further marginalization. Paradoxically, soldiers suffer too. How? When they rape women and they get infected, what happens to them? They also suffer. They also are haunted by the experiences that they go through. These are women, widows, who were left by their husbands after the conflict. This is just same thing, but I want to highlight the women becoming heads of households after their men are either dead, disappeared, or castrated, and they cannot become men anymore. And then women also suffer trauma and rejection. When they are raped, the men look at them as damaged goods. So they don't want them, and they look at them as people who are, yes, Capella is smiling. Okay, then I've already mentioned about women having specific needs. But men too have specific needs. They are detained, they are killed. A man who feels that he cannot protect his family is, you know how it feels like, that he couldn't protect his own family. So he feels a bit of stigmatized and he feels hopeless. And yeah, if he doesn't even have a home, you can see his home is destroyed. So what's going to happen to him? And so the findings continue. The community, I've already mentioned that, and I don't want to go back to that. So Mount Elgon is that. The people who are displaced in Mount Elgon were 45 to 65,000. Look at the population of Mount Elgon, 166, almost the whole community. And so what happens to them? And yet Mount Elgon is almost the breadbasket of Kenya in terms of providing agricultural produce. So when there's that kind of thing, the social, the economic, and political effects are immense. And so we cannot say anything. We are interviewed many people, and some of the women are interviewed. These are the statistics they gave. And of course, MSF was really there to provide medical help. And you can see how many were not abused, how many women were not abused, 3. And how many men were not tortured, 2%. 650 men were castrated. Someone said, and it's on YouTube, I wonder what will happen to Mount Elgon women. There are no men there. In reference to the fact that the men were castrated, so they can't do anything. And then here is a woman, and you can see this man, there are other people around with guns holding against this poor woman. That is real intimidation. Enhance community in peace strategies, enhance community and capacity to implement peace initiatives, enhance capacity of the Truth and Justice Reconciliation Commission. Right now it's facing a lot of problems because of political issues. There is infighting. People don't want to come out and talk, and then the perpetrators don't want to be named. So there's that. Research documentation of lessons so that we can, in other places, so that we can deal with them. Above all, the government must deal with the land question. Empower women to speak out. If they don't speak out, then they won't do anything. And then break cultural barriers. People don't speak about sex. There's a man who said, they did things to me that I can't talk about. That was castration and torture. And then bring perpetrators to justice, and of course the affected victims to seek treatment, especially those who are HIV. I want to focus on gender mainstreaming in terms of policy development, research, advocacy, legislation, and resource allocation. Women in Mount Elgon don't own land. It's the men who own. So there is need for government, private sector, individual to come together. Maureen talked about international law, so I don't want to talk about them, but there is the United Nations Security Council, which advocates for women's and children's protection, the CEDAW, and many other international laws. Finally, what next? Conflict has not been resolved. It's still on up to now, and the government denies accountability, and of course, the victims have decided to sue the government in East African Court of Justice. Then I invite Melissa to come and take over.